The Resident Evil franchise has been a staple in the survival horror genre for decades. It's a common name that is brought up in discussions, and its impact on the genre as a whole can't be overstated. For a time, it was believed that Capcom had forgotten what the franchise was, and an identity crisis became the result of this. With the release of Resident Evil 7 in 2017, Capcom had started a redemption arc, not only for the franchise, but for themselves as well. This became even more clear with the release of the Resident Evil 2 Remake in 2019. What I once believed was a horrible idea from its announcement turned into one of my favorite games of that year. Heck, it almost was my favorite game that year. It was only natural that a remake to its sequel, Resident Evil 3, would follow after. Resident Evil 3 Remake is a high-quality title that dances off the foundation created with the Resident Evil 2 Remake. But just like the original before it, it fails to live up to its predecessor, and even the original, by falling short of the mark in more ways than it should. When it comes to retelling an already established story, far too often do we see changes made in regards to modernizing the story for an audience that has never experienced the original. This definitely applies to the RE3 remake, such as changing Jill's entire demeanor to make her come off as more human-like. Unfortunately, what they managed to create was an incredibly straight-laced soldier that, understandably, suffers from PTSD after the events of RE1. Sadly, that subject is only ever touched upon once throughout the entire game, and then never expanded upon to flesh her out a bit more as a character.
My team was sent here to rescue civilians.
Right. How's that going for you?
Nemesis remains the persistent antagonist throughout the story, as well as other villains that keep the game's plot well in line with the original. The game still has that B-movie feel to it, and the developers have managed to succeed in that regard. Sadly, playing too close to this has resulted in a game that remains incredibly short, like the original, and even more so considering that content has been removed from the remake that was in the original. To this end, the game can be completed in roughly 6 hours for a normal first-time playthrough, shorter for subsequent playthroughs.
I'm definitely burning these clothes.
If you're coming from the original 1998 title, then the difference here in gameplay will be quite drastic. If you're coming from the remake of RE2 or even the sequels, such as RE4 and up, then you know what to expect. A third-person over-the-shoulder zombie-based shooter. However, the RE3 remake has a few differences between itself and the RE2 remake. Some good, and others questionable. For the most part, RE3 plays very similar to that of RE2. You'd be hard-pressed to notice the differences at face value. It's only when we dig a little deeper that the differences stand out. A new addition to RE3, unlike RE2, is the dodge ability. The dodge itself can be quite useful in situations where you find yourself a little too close to a zombie and need to get out of a sticky situation quickly. Included with this is the perfect dodge ability. This is a more advanced skill in which the player uses the dodge ability at just the right moment of being attacked. Jill will go into an action movie role and automatically aim at the enemy's weak spot, which for most zombies is the head. She also gets the benefit of increased critical hit chance and perfect dodge, which can take down a zombie instantly. Something you're going to wish you had often, as zombies in this game feel noticeably more bullet spongy than the previous game, turning zombies more into resource sinks than anything else. The dodge is also incredibly useful against Nemesis when dodging his incredibly damaging attacks. Speaking of Nemesis, the persistent threat in the game isn't quite as persistent as we were led to believe. Unlike Mr. X, Nemesis only appears during specific moments of the game, and those moments are heavily scripted. The once advertised as being able to follow you in any safe room foe is actually nothing more than a tool used to push the player forward in the story. And the sequences in which Nemesis appears are very action-oriented, which spirals RE3 into more of an action game than its original. A few of his encounters and transformations have been changed in the remake, again, for better or worse. On the inventory side of things, improvements have been made to picking up items in the field. Unlike RE2, RE3 removes some of the repetition and redundancy. Once you pick up an item for the first time, such as herbs or bullets, any subsequent gathering of the same item no longer interrupts the gameplay to show you that you picked up said item. Instead, it's immediately added to your inventory so that you can keep pressing on. It's one of those minute changes that you didn't know you wanted until you have it. When it comes to inventory space, similar to RE2, you can find additional pouches as you progress to increase your inventory size. However, for some reason, you can't combine bullets with your gun in cases where you have no room to store them. Probably a deliberate choice to keep the player from using the no reload exploit, like in RE2. One of the positives of the game being as short as it is that it lends itself to being pretty replayable. The overall gameplay loop is enjoyable enough that the length of the game starts to stick out more than its prequel. Even worse when you consider that that game has 2 character stories to play through right out of the gate. But if you're looking to speedrun the game, you can rest easy knowing that a single session won't take too much time out of your day. And like the originals, the game even throws unlockable weapons at you like a rocket launcher, giving your second time through an extra kick when it comes to putting Nemesis in his place. You know, the few times you encounter him. The game comes with an extra multiplayer mode called Resident Evil Resistance, something I haven't put much time into at the time of this recording, and to be completely honest, I most likely never will, as multiplayer is definitely not something I come to the RE series for. Resident Evil 3 Remake is a fun but short-lived experience that tries to improve on its prequel in many ways, but falls short of the mark. The cut content, while not world-changing, unfortunately makes an already short game even shorter than it truly needs to be. Its promises leading up to release definitely had fans wondering just what to expect, but the end result is a disappointingly average game that fails to exceed or even live up to its prequel, just like its original in the 90s.